Alright, let's dive into something that's been making waves recently: the banning of the Mummy film posters from the London Underground. But here's the twist: it's not because of the usual horror movie scares. No, this time, it's about something far more controversial: the depiction of a living mummy that regulators say looks like a dead child. Personally, I think this story is a goldmine for discussing the fine line between artistic expression and societal responsibility. Let me break it down for you. First off, what makes this really interesting is the specific complaint that led to the ban. The Advertising Standards Authority, ASA, received 30 complaints, with many arguing that the imagery was distressing for both children and adults. Now, in my opinion, this raises a deeper question: how do we balance the need to protect sensitive audiences with the freedom to create provocative art? Warner Brothers defended the campaign, claiming it was handled responsibly, but the ASA disagreed, stating the image gave a realistic impression of a dead child. What this really suggests is that even in horror, there are boundaries we collectively agree shouldn't be crossed. Or should we? One thing that immediately stands out is the description of the poster itself. The mummified figure has gray, ashen skin, cracked lips, and a vacant expression. From my perspective, this isn't just about the visual, it's about the emotional weight it carries. What many people don't realize is that horror often thrives on ambiguity, but this image seems to have crossed into a territory that feels too real, too raw. If you take a step back and think about it, the fact that one billboard was visible from a children's nursery adds another layer of complexity. Was this an oversight, or a miscalculation of how far the audience's tolerance could stretch? Now, let's talk about the broader implications. The ASA's decision wasn't just about this one poster. It's part of a larger conversation about what we consider acceptable in public spaces. Personally, I think this is where it gets fascinating. Horror films have always pushed boundaries, but in an era where mental health and trauma are taken more seriously, the rules of the game are changing. What this ban implies is that even fictional depictions can have real-world consequences, especially when they're displayed in spaces where people can't easily look away. It's not just about scaring people, it's about understanding the impact of those scares. A detail I find fascinating is how Warner Brothers tried to justify the poster by explaining the character's backstory. A living mummy returned to her parents as an adult after being kidnapped as a child. In my opinion, this backstory doesn't necessarily soften the image's impact. If anything, it raises more questions. Are we supposed to feel empathy for this character, or is she just another horror trope? What this really suggests is that context matters, but sometimes, the visual is so powerful that it overshadows everything else. And that's a problem when your audience includes kids who might not grasp the nuance. Finally, let's compare this to another Warner Brothers horror film, They Will Kill You, which faced complaints for allegedly glamorizing violence. The ASA dismissed those complaints, ruling the imagery was highly stylized. What makes this really interesting is the contrast between the two cases. One film's ads were deemed too realistic, while the others were seen as clearly fictional. From my perspective, this highlights how subjective these decisions can be. It's not just about the content, it's about how it's perceived and who's doing the perceiving. So, here's my closing thought. As we continue to push the boundaries of what's acceptable in media, we also need to ask ourselves who we're creating for, and who we might be leaving out. Personally, I think this ban is less about censorship and more about accountability. Horror has always been a reflection of our fears, but maybe it's time to consider whose fears we're amplifying. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below.